Tape Deck Media.
Hi there, I am Kelly Zemnikas, and I am the host of a brand new podcast called Holler and Wine. I'm a stand-up comedian, I'm a documentary filmmaker, and I genuinely love talking to people. And despite the fact that I do not care for the sound of my own voice, I've got a podcast now. So please come join us. We're going to have really good conversations. We're going to talk about cocktails, and I am going to give my guests a tarot card reading because why not? So join us on Holler and Wine. Hope to see you soon. Well, it's a podcast, so it's hear you soon? That sounds weird.
We got the riddles that'll make you chat. Oh yeah, baseline stuff with groove is tight. Get your funk on, we're rocking tonight. One more time.
Good morning, Ruddle Maniacs. Welcome back. Happy Monday to you. Welcome back to another episode of Ruddle Me This once again. As always, I am your faithful host, the rodeo clown of the mind, Taylor Ruddle. Speaking of mental health, I've got a very, very interesting guest for you this week. So my guest for this week is Logan Robinson. Now, Logan is a therapist, like a like a proper one. He studied and everything. I first sort of discovered Logan by seeing a post that he made in the Christchurch subreddit. Quick shout out, join the r/Ruddle Me This subreddit if you're not there already. I think there are 4 Ruddle Maniacs on there currently. And I saw that he was offering quite cheap therapy sessions, which, I mean, I'm sure if you've been not living under a rock, people are doing it pretty tough lately. Things are not going well in several areas of our society at the moment. So I thought that was a really cool thing of Logan to offer. So I actually sent him a little DM on Reddit. We sort of very quickly figured out a time to record, and then before I knew it, we were in Zoom doing the podcast. Throughout the course of this interview, I learned that Logan has sort of only just recently moved to Christchurch, and he seemed like a really nice guy from what kind of little snippet I got to chat with him over the course of this interview. He seemed like a very compassionate guy, and I think his approach to therapy and sort of mental health seemed very realistic, given the kind of, the state of things at the moment. So I'm going to chuck a link to Logan's website in the show notes. I think he's also going to send me an Instagram page to link to, but he said there wasn't a whole heap on that, so definitely go to the website. The deal he was offering at the time was $60 for a session every 2 weeks, so he said that sort of worked out to be about $30 a week. His normal sessions are double that cost. And so yeah, if you're out there struggling with your mental health, listening to the show is probably not making it any better. It cracked me up. But yeah, if you're doing it tough out there and you can spare $60 every couple of weeks, then it might be worth your while to go and get in touch with Logan and see if he can help you out a little bit. You can also always come out and see me do stand-up comedy, which might cheer you up a little bit. Probably more of a short-term band-aid of a solution there to a bigger problem, but hey, it might make you feel better on the night. Alrighty, well that's enough out of me. I hope you enjoy this interview. We talk about some heavier stuff, I guess. The world is quite stressful at the moment. We talk a little bit about men's mental health and why people feel a bit of stigma about going to see a therapist. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it. Something a little different for me. We'll see how you go. So please, Ruddle Maniacs, ladies and gents, everybody in between, children of all ages, please welcome to the show, Logan Robinson. Hello, Logan. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Kind of a spontaneous little thing we've ended up doing here, but for background for the listeners, I saw a post that you'd made about offering some sort of cheaper. Is what you do therapy or is it counselling? I'm a little murky on certain definitions.
Yeah, so I would more call it therapy. Because my background isn't actually in counselling. I'm a registered social worker. So I did my undergrad in social work and then went and did some postgrad in mental health and addictions. sort of specializing in that. So I like to think of it as therapy, because yes, counselors do therapy, and counseling is part of therapy, but it's not the whole picture.
Gotcha.
Um, so yeah, and I mean, I'm married to a counselor, so I don't want to step on her toes too much either. Um,
So between the
yeah,
two of you, you kind of cover the whole pie of options.
yeah. We moved down to Christchurch about 6 7 months ago now. But
Oh wow!
before we
So
moved, we
you're very fresh to Christchurch. How are you finding it so far?
are really enjoying it.
Where have you
I
where did you move from?
moved from Tauranga.
Right. Oh, so North Islands. Oh wow.
Yeah.
How did you sort of end up? How did you decide? Was it just because it's sort of a big city in the South Island? How did you kind of land on Christchurch?
Yeah, we were both kind of ready for a change. Um, we'd been in we'd been living in Hamilton and Tauranga prior, and I think we were just ready for a change.
Yeah.
Some new scenery, go somewhere new, do something a bit different. Um, but yeah, prior to us moving, we were both working in private practice up there as well. So yeah.
And you've just sort of launched your own practice, is that right?
Yeah, so I came down to Christchurch, and not long after being here, I started my own practice, um, and the whole reason I started was because I saw that there were really no options for affordable, um,
Yeah, no kidding.
cheaper counselling, and I
Yeah.
mean, no discredit to those who do charge what they charge, because I know they have big overheads.
Mhm.
And like clinic rooms are really expensive to book, so that you have to be able to make money at the end of the day as well, because that
Yeah,
is their
bills to be paid.
livelihood.
Yeah.
But I found that for a cohort, that online therapy via Zoom would work, because I didn't have those overheads of having to book spaces and things like that. I could, rather than take that extra profit and just make it margin, I'd rather pass that saving on and be able to offer a cheaper hourly rate.
Yeah, no, I think I saw your post and I thought it just came across as really genuine and like I try to where possible do like charity work. We've done some shows for the Cancer Society, raised a little bit of money for them, and you know, I've done I've spent heaps of time helping comedians get little bits and pieces because I've sort of will this be your first time foraying into being self-employed?
Yes, yep.
Yeah, so I, how are you? I tend to prefer self-employed to working for the man. I think there's definitely upsides to both, but I find that I'm a lot happier being self-employed. How are you finding it?
Yeah, it was really interesting. It wasn't what I thought it would be. Like I thought I would get out there and just do therapy, and the money would come in and it'd kind of be sweet.
Hmm.
Um, but there's so much more to it, and my learning curve was so steep in terms of, you know, how to market yourself, how to manage invoices, how to claim all the expenses. I was sort of doing all that on a rolling basis.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But for the first 3 months, I only realized this afterwards, that my main objective was not to do the thing, but to tell as many people as possible about the thing that I'm doing.
Right. So hang on. I think you might have lost me a little bit. So that's how you've started getting the word out. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. So there was way more marketing and effort into that front end of
Oh, yeah.
kind of putting myself out there, that I didn't
Yeah.
necessarily think about before I jumped into it.
Absolutely. And because you're sort of, I imagine in a sense to use a very schlocky, hacky word, but you're kind of building a brand with what you're doing. Because you are essentially your business, now that you're self-employed, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Well, that's great because I've got some questions that we'll ask you at the end to help the listeners get to know you. So we might be able to solidify a little bit as to what your brand is, based on how you respond to some of these questions. But yeah, let's talk about the whole mental health thing because it's obviously um, there's been a lot of stigma in New Zealand, especially with blokes talking about mental health. I mean, maybe even recently, it feels like people are a little more open to it nowadays. But what's your experience been like with that? Have you found that people still feel kind of awkward coming to see a therapist, or are they getting a little more kind of used to the idea?
Um, I think there definitely still is a stigma out there, in terms of, I guess, people not knowing what therapy actually is, or about there being some misconceptions
Case in point, the
about.
first question I asked you.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Um, so I think there still is some stigma, but I don't think it's for lack of wanting support. I
Mhm.
think it's misinformation
Yeah,
around what the role of a therapist and what therapy actually is and
yeah.
does.
Hey Ramblers, I'm going to be recording my second ever full-length comedy special, Taylor Ruddle, Panic at the Buffet, on the 26th of October. It's a Saturday from 8:30, and I would absolutely love it if you could be there. In Panic at the Buffet, I explore 5 different experiences from my life where I started overthinking, panicked, and then did something that I regretted at the time, but make for entertaining stories in hindsight. Some of the experiences in question include buying clothes as a plus-size man, trying to spell my name over the phone, a little white lie to a cashier that got out of hand, trying not to frighten women on the street at nighttime, and of course, the buffet. It all culminates at the end when I have the chance to step up and be a hero, having finally got a handle on my awkwardness. Or have I? Come along and find out what happened. The reviewer Bad Apple described this show as a fantastic investigation into the effects of anti-intellectualism in New Zealand, of self-realization, and the true dangers of small-town Foursquare check-ins. I was nominated for the Best Comic at the 2023 Nelson Fringe Festival, and I won the New Zealand Comedy Guild Breakout Comedian of the South Island 2023. So it's gonna be a really funny show. There's some early bird tickets available for $15, but general admission is $20. You can get those from littleandromeda.co.nz. This one is going to be my last full-hour show for a couple of years, as I want to spend the time following this building up the podcast and other kind of online content. So if you've been meaning to come out and see me at a comedy show, you just haven't got around to it yet, this is pretty much your last chance to see me doing an hour for a couple of years. So I highly recommend you come out and have a giggle with me. Ticketing link is also in the show notes. Thank you, and back to the show. Is there a quick elevator pitch you could tell my listeners, like what they can expect by seeing a therapist?
Yeah, so essentially, if you wanted to think about what your general experience of therapy would be and what it would look like, I would describe it as a space where you can explore the possible solutions to the problems you're facing.
That's very concise. Is it the sort of thing, because I've never been myself, but that's it's generally been for more of a lack of being able to afford it than a willingness to. But is it the kind of thing that you'd recommend people who aren't actively dealing with any massive struggles to do? Like, is it a kind of like exercising, for example, you can sort of be on maintenance where you're not trying to get stronger or faster, but it's just good for you to stay in that routine of exercising. Is it the same kind of thing with therapy, where it can be beneficial even if you're not dealing with something huge?
Yeah, and in the same way, and to use your analogy, in the same way that some people get real value from going to see a coach at the gym, and that coach kind of holding them accountable to doing the things that keep them well. I would say yes, not because I'm a therapist myself, but because I think everyone should have, even if it's not in a professional capacity, everyone should have one of those people that other people are willing to come to and have those safe and raw conversations.
Yeah,
Whether
yeah.
that's a professional therapist, or it's a colleague, or it's a friend, or it's a brother or a sister. Everyone should have one of those people where they can go and kind of lay everything out on the table and look at what the options are, or have
Yeah.
someone ask the right questions to unpick what's really going on. There's this really good saying in therapy that the problem is not actually the problem.
I've
And
heard
so
that before, yeah.
someone will present something, but it's only through a series of really asking the right questions and unpacking what's actually sitting under that that you really see what's going on. And so everyone should have a person in their life that can ask those questions. And so like some people will get value out of a coach at the gym, whereas other people will work out with their friends. Other people are completely self-motivated and they'll go and do the workout and then they'll go and tell someone else about it later,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's not, so therapy isn't for everyone, but having that kind of person is.
Interesting. I wonder what the reason that there has been, like, is it a culture thing or is it a human nature thing that people feel a little bit reserved to talk about their feelings? What is your kind of insight into that? What do you think is the reason people feel a little bit hesitant?
I think it has a lot to do with the cultural context that we're in, and I'm going to try my best not to get political or make any sort of statements that could be perceived as political, but
Uh-huh.
we're kind of raised in a context where there's so much competition,
Yeah.
everyone's competing for resources, for jobs, for businesses compete with each other, you know, your people will move between jobs to earn the most money, so they're competing. There's competition in the labor market. Everyone is around competition all the time, and I think there is still some hangovers from that around people not being willing to show weakness.
Mm,
And because vulnerability in our cultural context, vulnerability is seen as a form of weakness or something that can be exploited. So people are very shy to show that, lest they be perceived as weak or have that taken advantage of.
yeah, no, that makes total sense. You mentioned just before we started recording that you felt like stress was an interesting part of this to talk about, and you worded it kind of interestingly. You said that our baseline for stress these days is quite high. So did you want to talk about that? Is that a personal theory of yours, or is that like fairly common in the therapy world?
So there is some really interesting research around the psychology of stress, particularly in the more clinical psychology arena, which therapy does draw from. And I did some psychology training through my social work degree as part of that. But I think it is kind of a personal theory of mine in that I haven't seen it written quite that way, but I'm sure it is out there. But I think that our baseline of stress that we all carry day to day is so much higher now than it used to be.
Hmm.
And part of that is to do with the competitive nature of the world around us. I think social media and information overload has a lot to do with that as well. We've essentially got the collective knowledge of mankind
Yeah.
almost in our pocket, and
Yeah.
our brains have just not evolved to be able to handle or even comprehend having access to that much information. So I think that stresses us out as well. And I think post COVID, there's been a lot of breakdown in the ways people socialize and interact as well, and particularly in spaces where recreation, pre-COVID may have been more common. So
Yeah.
not only are our baseline stresses higher, we haven't got as many of those release valves as what we used to.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that the being sort of cursed with the knowledge, because I was just talking about this a few episodes ago on the podcast with a comedian friend of mine about how it feels like you're always in this catch-22 where if you go on social media, you're sort of perpetually bombarded with everything horrible that's happening out in the world, and you
Mm.
don't want to just like, well, the way I word it is you do want to stick your head in the sand, but it feels irresponsible to do so, even though logically there's very little chance of you fixing this problem on the other side of the planet. And yeah, it's tough because it feels like you should know what's going on, but it's like, I don't know, is it because we're empathetic, we sort of we take on more of the the stress and the sort of I guess angst and stuff from seeing all this horrible stuff. Like, have you got any tips out there for people to how to manage something like that? Like, what's your relationship to social media like?
Oh, I try and spend as much time off it as I
Mhm.
can.
Yeah,
Like I recognize it as important, and I still find myself doom scrolling from
yeah,
time to time. But I generally try. I make active effort to try and have blocks of time away from it. Like when I get home from work, often I'll put my phone on do not disturb, and I'll go and put it in the bedroom for half an hour.
that's
Like
discipline.
I literally have to have it in a separate room, otherwise I will pick it up um and scroll, as I'm sure most people these days would.
Hmm. Oh yeah,
Um, so yeah, for me, that physical distance, if it's not immediately there, um, and I've noticed a couple of times I'll reach for it, but if it's not immediately there, um, I usually don't bother.
yeah. I did a similar thing when I was gaming a few weeks ago. I put my snacks in the kitchen, so if I wanted a
Mhm.
snack, I had to get up and go and grab a couple of them, and I had to walk to do that. And so, yeah, you have that thing where you think, oh well, at least I'm doing a little bit of movement. But then on the other hand, at other times you're like, oh, I can't be bothered. So it's quite a good system, the physical distance. I think it's tough for us as well because like we were saying before, the brand thing, you're sort of tethered to social media in that we kind of need to use
Mhm.
it to hopefully find more business, or, in my case, it's finding listeners for the podcast, finding people to come out to shows. And I imagine for you, it's people who might be interested in becoming a client of yours.
Yeah.
Um, so it's like I almost always feel like I've got to, it's that old analogy for like food addiction being a bit like heroin, except you have to have a little bit of heroin every day to survive. It feels like that. We have to use the
Mhm.
social media, but you can't just let the dam break and everything come tumbling out, you know?
Yeah, yeah, oh, absolutely. I've got people that I worked with way back in the day, when I was 18, 19, and some of them haven't moved on with their lives in the same way that their colleagues at the time did.
Mm.
And they post a lot on social media, but it almost just seems like they're just speaking into the void.
Oh yeah.
There's
Yeah.
kind of no one really listening on the other side.
Yeah.
And I think once I realized that that's what a lot of social media is,
Hmm.
um, it's a lot of noise with a few louder voices than others. But if the point is for everyone to get louder and be noticed, that just raises the volume of the whole room.
It does, yeah. I really miss the early days of the internet when you sort of weren't exposed to the whole internet. You'd just look up, like, if you're into gaming or a certain sport or something, you'd find the little message board
Mm.
that you liked, and then that was your nice little corner of the internet. And now they're just funneling everything into this one feed, and it just feels like it's not. I mean, I'm sure it's working for their purposes because people stay on the
Mm.
hamster wheel, but um, I definitely don't enjoy it as much as I used to, it feels like. But then I think as well, because we were talking about stress and everything, like, are we around the same age? I just turned 32 this year.
Yeah, I turned 35.
Oh, there you go. So we're pretty much of the same generation. And I
Yeah.
think you were talking about this, the baseline for stress. I think people of our age now, you're in this kind of, we're in this odd spot where we think, oh man, I don't feel like I used to be this stressed maybe 10, 20 years ago. But then at the same
Mm.
time, we were only sort of 10, 15. You're in high school, and obviously you have things that are going wrong in high school, but um, I, I don't know whether or not it's caused by things going badly or just the fact that I'm getting older and I have more responsibilities to on my mind, which is why stress.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really interesting one. Yeah, is it because of the responsibilities, or is it genuine stress? And I mean, if you take certain metrics, like I guess like an income growth versus the growth in the cost of goods and things like that,
Yeah,
then we
yeah,
we have gone backwards, and things are worse.
yeah,
Um, but then if you look at how some of our generation have moved through to start meeting some of those milestones,
yeah,
around, for those of us, for those of our generation who are fortunate enough to own homes,
Mhm.
and do some of that stuff, then there are positive metrics as well.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to pinpoint. I guess it'd be really hard to pinpoint exactly where it
Yeah.
is, and
100%.
whether
Yeah.
it's yeah.
Um, is there any kind of, I guess, like recommendation you could give people to like something small they could do throughout their week that may or may not help with this sort of passive stress they're taking on? Is, I guess it isn't, it's depends on the individual, but I imagine there's maybe several things which are, unequivocally good for you, like get under the sun, I think, is for some people that have depression. Excuse me, sorry. It helps them to get outside first thing in the morning and that sort of thing. Like, have you got anything like that?
Yeah, so the first one is definitely exercise, and I know that's really, for some people it'll be really cliche, but just getting out and moving, like
Mhm.
not you don't have to go to the gym or go for a run, but even just getting out and moving and walking around, I think that's the first thing that'd be really good for people, and trying to have new or novel experiences.
Mm.
I do think one of the other key indicators of stress is that these routines and these rhythms we get ourselves in because of the way modern life is structured, that we don't have any kind of new, novel, or exciting experiences.
Yeah.
People are quite. I've noticed post-pandemic, people are quite reserved, and people are far less likely to, or seem a lot more reluctant to try new things.
Yeah.
And I think there's this, and I might be going off on a completely different track here, but I think um, people aren't willing to suck at something first.
Oh yeah.
So people aren't willing to try things just because they might suck at it, and
Yeah. Yeah.
people aren't really willing to give new stuff a go because you have to suck at something and keep doing it in order to get better.
Oh yeah.
So to come back to one of the one of the cures for stress, or not cures, but one of the things that helps,
Hmm.
is I think have new and exciting experiences. Do things you wouldn't normally do.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a great. It's yeah. That's a really cool little, a little kind of. You wouldn't think about it, but it's. I feel like you'd be familiar with the Matrix movie, right?
yep.
Feels a bit like that in some ways. Like people being online is, I think it gives you the illusion of you're seeing interesting things happen. So it kind of gives you this
Mhm.
secondhand feeling of like, I just watched a guy like parachuting or whatever it is, and like it makes you feel like, yeah, I'm exposing my mind to all this interesting stuff, but actually you're not really. You're just like watching it on a screen. So that is a great little tip there, and I hadn't thought of it. I was going to say with your exercise one as well. I just recently this is an advice to any listeners out there based on what I've learned myself recently. I kind of thought I didn't like going to the gym until, so I'm 32 now, probably like the last 10 or 15 years that I've been trying to go to the gym. But actually, I just needed to find the things that I do like. So I've hung like a boxing bag up in my garage and I've been punching that because I really enjoy that. And then I've always struggled to like, do you lift, Logan?
Yeah, I'm not very strong, but I do lift. Yeah,
But you do all the barbell kind of stuff, right? Like squats or something like that.
yeah. I keep pretty active, try and do full body
Yeah.
workouts. Yeah.
I always found those barbell ones so awkward to do. So like my
Hmm.
motivation for it, it just didn't feel like, I don't know, it just didn't feel right. But then
Hmm.
just lately I found some dumbbells that I had and I've been throwing those around a little bit after the boxing in my garage. And I'm like, I actually quite enjoy these dumbbell workouts. So it doesn't feel like a chore for me to do it anymore. And I've now found myself looking online for other little ones that I can do with the dumbbells. So I think to the listeners out there, if you've struggled with exercise, tying into your second suggestion there, Logan, try a bunch and see which ones you do like, and then it won't feel like you're, like a chore, I suppose. So that, yeah, I just wanted to add that in there to the listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are so many options out there.
Hmm.
If people don't want to go for a run or go and lift weights, they go and do a spin class, go and do
Zumba.
yoga,
Yeah.
go and do Zumba. Yeah. There are so many different options out there now, and just being willing to put yourself out there and give something a go.
Yeah.
Because what I always think is that every single person in that gym or every single person in that class was in your position at some point where they were outside looking in and they took that leap.
Yeah. 100%. And it coming back to what you said about people being a little bit scared to be bad at something first. I get this quite a bit because I've been doing stand up for 9 years now. And I've had people that I've sort of been not arguing as such with comics, but trying to encourage people to write more jokes or try new stuff out. And they wouldn't want to. And someone said something to the effect of like, we can't all be prolific writers like you, Taylor. And I remember being like, I'm not a prolific writer. I've just died 9 times for the joke to work on the 10th time. Like it's just being not afraid to, like, it's the exact thing. Like I wish I'd worn the t-shirt, but I have a t-shirt today. It says been dying since day one on it. And it's got a skeleton hand punching out of the ground with a microphone in it. And it's in front of a gravestone. And
Yeah.
that really sums up my attitude towards stand up is like, just be willing to die and you'll be fine. So yeah, maybe an unintentionally inspiring little message there.
Yeah, and do you find that after you tell a joke on stage and if it flops,
Yeah.
but you deliver the rest of the set, do you still feel stoked after getting
Yeah.
off stage that you made it through?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I lost the fear of bombing quite early, I think. And I think maybe I'm not as introspective as some of the other comics, so that might have been that. But yeah, I honestly find bombing funny now. So if a joke doesn't land, I'll just laugh and be like, all right, you guys didn't like that one. That's fine. I got 10 others that you might like. And so yeah, it's water off a duck's back for me. But I know a lot of comics in Christchurch are still very scared to bomb. So I got to say, don't be afraid, guys. It's not the end of the world. There's another show. There's always another show.
Yeah. Oh, cool, man.
Let's rip into some questions about you, if you're okay with that.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so these are all relatively quick fire, but they might lead interesting places. So the first one that I've got from a list of interesting questions, do you think you would survive a zombie apocalypse?
Yes.
All right, it's confident. Have you got a plan in mind or anything like that?
So my exercise of choice is I run ridiculously long distances,
Oh yeah, you're
because
safe.
I find it quite meditative. So I reckon, based on the zombie movies I've seen and the way they move, they're not that quick.
Mm-hmm.
So I reckon I could find just a pretty relaxed, steady pace, and I could probably create some distance between myself and the zombies.
I love it. Okay, so maybe that's the answer to the second question is, do you have a skill that people would be surprised to learn you have?
Yep. So yeah, other than the running the ridiculously long distances, I also spent time learning how to knit.
Oh, awesome. Very good. Have you made anything kind of like of note?
No, I've never actually completed a pattern, but yep, I learnt, I got started, I sucked at it, I got a little bit better, but I haven't continued it enough to be really good at it yet.
Hell yeah. Okay, so they say the Scouts' motto is always be prepared. Do you have a motto for yourself? You can
It
say
won't
no to
matter
these
tomorrow.
questions. You can say there is, like, if you don't have an answer to them, you could just say no. So that's a no.
So my answer to that question would be it won't matter tomorrow.
Oh, very nice. That's like the stand-up. Yeah, very good. It's like with most of them aren't going to remember our names. Like I've never been recognized from doing open mics before. No one's ever come up to me and said, "Oh, I saw you. You're really funny." I've been doing this for 9 years, so like people
Yep.
don't pay as much attention as we think they do. Next question: what's one food from history you'd like to go back in time and try?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I'd like to go back to the Western Americas and try ox.
Oh yeah, very
I,
good.
I reckon an ox would make a real good steak.
Fantastic. Do you have a favorite Wikipedia rabbit hole?
The most recent Wikipedia rabbit hole I fell down came from a podcast that I was listening to called Fall of Civilizations.
Oh, I love that
And
podcast. Yeah.
yeah, so good. And I went down this Wikipedia rabbit hole about the Mayan Empire and how it
Oh,
collapsed. And I ended up going down this weird kind of climate change, crop failure,
yeah.
um,
Is that the
Wikipedia
one?
rabbit hole.
Is that the one where like, oh, no, it might have been a different Fall of Civilizations, but I remember listening to one where it was terrifying because a bunch of people moved to like, it was like Iceland or somewhere in the kind of Baltics. And just over generations, their soil got less and less fertile, and then eventually they all kind of just died off. And there's kind of nothing they could do about it. I think it was just like physics.
Yeah, yeah, it's a super interesting, super interesting podcast. And yeah, if I reckon anyone who jumps on Wikipedia after that will go down
Absolutely.
some deep holes. Yeah.
Do you have a sick day ritual?
So the most recent day I was sick, was back when I was early, in the early days of starting my business, and I pretty much just played Tears of the Kingdom all day. And yeah, I just got a blanket, absolutely wrapped myself up and played that for about 6 hours straight.
That sounds like just what the doctor ordered to me. What was the last thing you really laughed hard at?
So it was a reel of Michael Scott videos on Instagram.
Nice.
And it was basically all the clips of him saying that's what she said. Which yeah, I know that I know the joke hasn't aged well. But just it's not so much a joke with him, it's more his delivery of it.
The delivery of it, yeah,
That's
absolutely.
yeah.
Okay, then last one before I'll get you to talk a little bit about your business again. So, is there an album you're listening to, a TV show you're watching, anything that you'd like to recommend to my listeners?
Yes, there is a really good show, White Lotus.
Oh, yep.
Yep, from a psychology point of view, that all the characters are super interesting, and I find myself watching and trying to understand the characters more than, but perhaps more than I'm following the plot. Like I'm still following the plot, but the characters are just designed so well, that yeah, they're just really interesting people.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so we got 5 minutes left in the Zoom. Tell my listeners about your the thing you posted on Reddit, the sort of slightly cheaper therapy option, and where they can get in touch with you if they would like to take you up on it.
Yeah, so what I'm doing is essentially trying to offer cheaper therapy. It is done via Zoom, and it will be done in the evenings, so outside sort of normal business hours. But as I mentioned earlier, because I don't have the overheads of a clinic room to provide that service, rather than take that extra margin, I'm using that to be able to offer the therapy much cheaper. So it'll be half price. So my usual price is $120. I'll be offering these sessions for $60 on a fortnightly basis. So the idea is that that's $30 a week for people to access therapy. So it is via Zoom outside normal business hours. I have got a website set up called Robinson Wellness.
I will chuck that in the show notes for the listeners to check out. Yeah, anything else to add about your Robinson Wellness?
No, so if people jump on the website, they'll be able to go in and book directly, or be able to flick me a message and inquire some more. And of course, if you're not sure if Zoom is going to work for you, because it doesn't work for everyone, and some people do want to be able to sit face to face with a person, and I completely get that. So if people are willing to give it a try and they come in and they find that it doesn't work for them as well, we can have those conversations. What I really want to do is for people to have a space to be able to talk about the stuff that's on their mind and help find ways to either manage that or overcome that. And yeah, like I said, for some people over Zoom, it works fine. For others, it doesn't. But you don't know till you don't try.
Exactly. You got to try new things. Well, thanks so much for giving up some of your time. The time's flown by. It's been a delight talking to you. Let's stay in touch. Maybe we'll bring you back on the podcast and we can do some other stuff. I'm not quite sure what at this point, but if you're keen to to keep yapping, I'm happy to bring you back and have you on the podcast again.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I've really enjoyed this conversation. So yeah,
It's been chill, yeah.
thank you for having me.
Hey, no, happy to. You have a good rest of your week, and we'll see you in the future.
Thanks. Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed that interview. This next piece that I stuck in was originally part of the introduction, but then I just kept talking and I just kept talking, and then before I knew it, it was about 10 minutes, so I'm chucking this after the interview retroactively. So a little plug and some updates as to my plans for stand-up and stuff in the kind of the next year to come. So if you're into that, keep listening, but if not, I'll catch you next week. Alrighty, past me, take it away. It's also not exactly locked in at the time of this recording, but I think by the episode drops, we should have had it locked in, and fuck it, I'm going to start promoting it anyways. If you're free on the 26th of October, which is in about 2 months' time, I would love it if you would come out and see me record my second or third comedy special. It's called Panic at the Buffet. If you've been following me for the last year or so, you'll know that this is the material that I started when I went on my 20-something show around the tour around the South Island with David Correos. A lot of that material was kind of conceived of during that tour. I also took this to the Nelson Fringe and the Dunedin Fringe to mixed results. No, they were fun. So yeah, I'm going to film it. I'm going to put it online, and then I can sort of move on from it again. It's a bit like the Rudzilla special. I want to film it, chuck it online, and then kind of move on from it. I'm going to retire all those jokes. So it's going to be the last time that you see me do most of these routines. There's some stuff I've been doing for a little bit longer than the tour. There's a few old gags that I've sort of mixed in there. So it's a great show. Very, very funny. Some big laughs in it. I would love to see you along to help me record it and laugh loudly during the taping. It's going to be at 8:30, and it's going to be at Little Andromeda, which is insanely good for me. And Little Andromeda is a fantastic little theatre. Awesome lighting and audio. So the recorded thing is going to be good quality too. It's going to be a step up from Rudzilla, I believe. But yeah, in order to actually make it, I need people in the room. So I would love to see you go to, I believe it would be on Little Andromeda's website. So that is littleandromeda.co.nz. I will try to get a link down in the show notes as well. I'm going to do some early bird tickets, a little bit cheaper. I think normal tickets are going to be $20, and then early birds will be $15. And if you know me in real life and you're listening to the podcast and price is a factor, just flick me a DM and I'll see if I can get Little Andromeda to give me some comp tickets. Because at the end of the day, I would rather have a full audience and a fantastically loud audience for the recording than a couple of extra dollars from your ticket money. So if price is an issue, send me a DM on my Facebook page and I will see what I can do to twist their arm into giving me some comps. I might talk about this a little bit more in another episode. I might do a rambling with Rado talking about that, but I think this is going to be my last hour-long show for the next year or so. Partially because I don't really have the kind of inspiration for the next one. I feel like I would be kind of forcing it if I was going to just come up with a fringe show concept out of nowhere. And also because I just struggle to sell tickets to solo shows as it is at my current non-existent level of fame. Shout out to all the listeners who come out to see me in person. It feels amazing to see people at a show who then tell me that they're a podcast listener. But yeah, the plan is to record Panic at the Buffet, hopefully drop that before Christmas. And then I am also going to release another special that I filmed 2 years ago that is called, the working title was Classy Comedy, and we never really changed it. And what I find kind of interesting about Classy Comedy is it was my attempt at doing 45 minutes totally clean so that I could get some cruise ship work, which I never got. But the interesting thing about that special is it kind of became, it was material from Rudzilla, and it was material that sort of eventually became the Panic at the Buffet. So it's kind of like a proto special for the other two specials. It's like Digimon. Your Digimon can sort of evolve into one of two champion forms. I'm getting a little inside baseball here, but the gist of it is it's kind of like a proto special for the other two. So I think people might like to see that as well. So yeah, the plan is record Panic at the Buffet in October, get it all edited and uploaded. Then I'm going to drop Classy Comedy. And then I think, honestly, it's probably going to be a little bit of a hiatus from me on working on a long show. I really need to just figure out how to get my name out there a little bit more. So, like, obviously having specials online will help that. But, I got to spend the next year or so just getting my stand-up in front of people. So if you like what I do and you have friends, please tell them about me. Send my clips to them. Send the podcast to them. Just share it where you can. It's very much appreciated. So yeah, I'm rambling so much here, but I'm still coming to terms with this myself. So yes, 26th of October, 8:30 p.m. Panic at the Buffet. Last time doing all the jokes, filming it, getting it, putting it online. And then I'm going to just do spots and run quizzes and do the podcast and then do some skits for online. And hopefully I can then come back in 2026, maybe the end of 25, with a new show. And I will let you know when that's going to happen. So thanks again for listening. Leave a review. All the links to that are in the show notes. Tell a friend about the podcast. Appreciate you listening. Keep listening. And I will talk to you again next week. Ruddler out. Thank you for listening to Ruddle Me This. Don't forget to hit subscribe and leave me a review on your favorite podcast platform. You can find me on social media at Taylor Ruddle Comedy on all the major platforms. You can also join patreon.com/Taylor Ruddle Comedy for free, which gets you access to all sorts of extras and behind the scenes content, as well as allows you to communicate directly with me and let me know what you think of the show. Tune in again next Monday for another episode of Ruddle Me This, and until then, Ruddler out.
This has been a Tape Deck Media production. Thank you for listening.
Hey Ruddlers, I joined a group of podcasters that we are calling the Trailer Alliance, a group of podcasters that share each other's trailers at the end of the episodes and generally support each other. So at the end of each episode for the next few weeks, I'm going to be playing a trailer of one of the members of the Trailer Alliance. And here's one of them now. I hope you like it.
Top of the day, everyone. I'm Nisha.
And I'm Buddha Badass.
And we're the hosts of Hot Garbage True Crime Edition. Do you guys like true crime?
I really don't. I feel like you force me on this show every freaking time I come here.
Do you guys enjoy listening to victims and murderers and grotesque stuff?
People that are sick in the freaking head, that's who likes it. That's who likes it.
Well, if you like that kind of stuff, then you should totally check us out. I mean, every single Thursday, we drop the most hottest cases, and we have fun while doing it.
You drop the most hottest cases? You drop murder and death. Kill.
How many people can actually say that they have fun while listening to a true crime podcast? And I feel like that's what we do here.
So you're just not going to listen to me now? I'm just going to say this and you're not going to listen to me?
And you know what? Our listeners are not just our listeners, but they're our friends and our trash pandas. We love you guys.
They're a lot, and I will agree to that part, but I'm still just mad at you for just not talking to me. They're paying you this well to say all this.
So check out Hot Garbage on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Check us out every single Thursday. A new episode drops.
I officially hate this commercial. On some real.